Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Caruncho. Welcome to my presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about global tech, local limits, freedom of expression in cyberspace, and the ethical boundaries of content moderation. Okay. So, um, as we can see here, as of 2025, over 5.5 billion people um, have access to the internet, at least. That's over 68. That's around 68% of the population. So a lot of people already have access to the internet. And this is not a first world thing anymore. It's worldwide. Um, First, I want to talk about the First Amendment. Here in the US, we have the First Amendment, which guarantees the right to free speech. It allows Americans to express their opinions, discuss ideas, without repercussion from the government or any other type of entity. In the US, freedom of speech is not absolute. It definitely has its limitations. So, for example, speech that incite violence, defamatory statements, and certain types of obscenity. Uh, there have been some ongoing, there have been some debates over freedom of speech and the internet and the cyberspace and stuff like that. For example, Moody versus NetChoice. That's one case that I was reviewing, and the states of Texas and Florida were basically trying to tell social media companies how to do the job, how to control the content. Supreme Court said no, you can't do that. That's a violation of the of their First Amendment. But the cases are still ongoing and under review. Before social media, people, used to share ideas and debates in what we call town halls or like newspapers and stuff like that, public spaces. Today, most of the conversations are happening online. Social media has social media companies have tremendous power. They control um when do you see this information, how you see it, how it is presented to you. So that's comes with a lot of responsibility, right? As the internet grows worldwide, right, tech companies are also growing worldwide, but they do have some challenges when approaching the global markets. For example, not every country has the same laws, and they have to, if they want to operate in certain countries, they have to follow the laws and regulations of those countries. For example, in Germany, you have the NetzDG law, which requires removal of any illegal content, and they need to have personnel in the social media companies dedicated to that. In India and Turkey, uh, the government demands, like they demand compliance officers to remove any any post the government deems, unsafe or not proper. In China, they have what is known as the Great Firewall, and this basically protects. I mean, not it doesn't protect. It basically separates like foreign platforms so their users in China can use it, right? I mean, to access stuff like this, we would need like VPNs and stuff of that kind. But even like Apple, they were very criticized for this because they banned VPNs in the App Store in China, in the App Store for the Chinese. And in Russia, Russia basically requires the social media platforms to like remove any content that's critical to the state, or to the military or anything stuff like that. Any like um, delicate conversations that are be having, they could say, "Hey, we don't want that on there," and they have to. The social media companies have to comply with that. Globalization has made everything more complicated when it comes to like cyberspace. As tech companies look to expand to like other markets like Asia, Africa, the Middle East, they have to basically comply with the regulations of each culture and each different country, right? Platforms like Meta, TikTok try to juggle compliance with cultural norms and profits. So this is very challenging for them. And then how they decide to govern, or how do they decide to rule in their platforms, how do they decide to make the rules for their platforms, right? That's what we call platform governance. And it basically is different for each state that they want to participate in. For my ethical analysis, I looked at this issue through an utilitarian lens, right? Utilitarianism evaluates actions based on their consequences for the overall happiness and welfare of society. In one hand, you have the idea that restricting harmful content such as hate speech and misinformation prevent some harm, right? But and that creates a more just justification for these moderation practices that social media companies use. However, in the long term, excessive censorship can lead to other types of problems like authoritarianism. It can lead to greater societal harm in the long term just because you're not allowing people to see the information that they want to see. So it does have long-term consequences. And then for a global analysis, we have um, I looked into the issue of a split internet, right? Which is basically what it means is that it's different access for different people around the world. In China, they use their own they have their own ecosystem. They use their own software apps, like WeChat, Baidu, Weibo. Russia, it penalizes companies that don't comply with their laws. And in UA there is more transparency, but the government can also mandate to take something down that they don't appreciate. uh, and then I included also some counter arguments and nuanced positions. It's important to acknowledge freedom of expression is not absolute, even in the US. So that's a valid argument that somebody could use to justify content moderation. And then in different cultures, they prioritize different values, right? They may prioritize national harmony over personal expression, which is something to take into account. And also for some countries, tech corporation is the only way the citizen can get access to any type of information. So sometimes you gotta think about it and say either do these companies not operate there at all, or uh, they do operate there and they follow the laws, they follow the restrictions that imposed on them by the government, and those people can have some access to some information, right? So, and just to close it off, I want to give some closing arguments. American values of free speech, the truth is they collide with international realities. Not everybody in the world has this right. That the government supports. Most countries honestly don't respect freedom of expression. That's a very Western idea, and even what other Western countries are not as lenient on it as we are here in US. Global tech companies face a challenge. They must choose between upholding these values or adjusting to local demands, right? And at the end of the day, their primary motivator is definitely an economic one. So most of the times they're going to choose to comply with the laws and regulations of each country. And while content moderation is necessary, right, in some cases, there's also a risk of silencing important voices. We've seen already social media companies trying to ban presidential candidates or like political candidates or specific information that the public is trying to access, right? They try to moderate this type of content, and that could be dangerous. So, and then as a last thing, I want to say the utilitarian perspective urges these companies to think beyond market access. They need to consider also the greater good. It's not everything economic. And I want to thank you all for listening to my presentation. Thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great evening.